Hello and welcome back to A Taste of Critical Thinking with Old Doc Mulder. Episode 7 here. We're going to start to look at some common patterns of reasoning. I'm in the kitchen. I thought I'd play into the title a little bit, A Taste of Critical Thinking, and chop some things while I'm explaining one of the first common patterns of reasoning we're going to look at. Honestly, I entitled this series A Taste of Critical Thinking. I was hoping to catch some people searching for food videos, stumble upon my videos and say, hey, that's interesting. Just a little trick on my part. I've heard rumors that food videos are pretty popular, so I thought I'd tap into that. But in the previous episode, we looked at critical thinking focuses on logical argument as reasoning, citing relevant evidence to support a claim. Try to steer clear of argument as fighting, bickering. That tends to be quite counterproductive. And for the next several videos, I'm going to be looking through some of the common patterns of reasoning that you should be able to recognize and evaluate, distinguish good reasoning from bad reasoning. The first one we're going to look at today is called Inductive Generalization, sometimes called enumerative induction, depending on the book you're reading. This is a fairly familiar kind of reasoning, and it's fairly clear what makes for good reasoning and bad reasoning, but still people get into a lot of trouble with this. This is a sort of reasoning to support a general claim, a general belief about a group. And the way it works, an easy illustration is, imagine if I had a large bucket of marbles, white marbles and black marbles. I didn't bother to get a whole bunch of marbles to illustrate this, so you have to use your imagination. But I've got this large bucket of marbles, and I want to know about how many are black and how many are white, but I'm too lazy to dump out the whole thing and count every single one. So the method of sampling, this is the way to get good evidence in support of a general conclusion. First of all, the sample, I want to take a sample here and count the black ones and the white ones. The sample needs to be a random representative mix. So I would first mix up the marbles really well, make sure they're all mixed together, and I don't have, some whites clumping together, blacks, but all mixed together. And then a large sample, that's another key ingredient. Random sampling and a large sample. So instead of just grabbing a few and counting them, I get a big, large sample, and then I count. And let's say I count in my sample 60% black and 40% white. I can conclude probably the whole bucket is approximately 60% black, 40% white. Now, I conclude probably the distribution in the whole bucket is close to what I had in my sample. We don't get certainty here. This is not a deductive argument. A deductive argument would give us, would guarantee the conclusion. For example, if I had a much smaller container, I might dump them all out and count every single one, and then I'd know for sure 60% are black and 40% are white. But this method of a large random sample, if it's truly random representative mix, we feel a high level of confidence that the overall population is close to what I saw in my sample. Chop, chop here. Keep the food video going. Okay. Now, it's pretty simple. The way to do it properly, get a random mix, get a large enough sample, and when you're talking about marbles, people get it. When you're talking about scientists sampling fish out of a lake to test certain levels of chemicals, people get it. So pretty straightforward, right? Well, big problem here. When humans start to generalize about groups of other humans, it goes off the rails. Just crazy. People get crazy. I don't know why. I honestly don't understand why. But people generalizing about other people, and sometimes even generalizing about non-humans like pit bulls. People have a tendency toward two types of problems here. First of all, regarding the sample size, if people generalize too quickly from a small sample, jump to a conclusion, maybe they've only had experience direct experience with 3 pit bulls in their life, and then they jump to this broad generalization about all pit bulls, such and such. This is hasty generalization. It's a problem of prejudging, really. It's related to the idea of prejudice, prejudging before you've seen enough evidence to back it up. People do tend to jump pretty quickly to generalizations about other people based on very limited experience. Critical thinkers don't do that. The other big problem is even if you have a large sample, it might not be a random representative mix of the group you're talking about. So I might have experience with hundreds of pit bulls, but I only came into contact with them at some dog training institute where people had brought pets with behavior problems to be trained. So then that would not be a representative mix. It would be specifically selected for a certain type of pit bull with aggression issues. And same thing with people. A lot of people see other sorts of people, those people, we'll use that phrase, those people, only through a filter. You only see a certain type, not a representative cross-section. And that is what's called bias. Bias means your sample that you're looking at is not balanced or representative. It's skewed. It's off kilter. Bias literally means a slant. So if I grabbed a large sample of marbles and it's like 80% white and only 20% black marbles, that is skewed, off kilter. It's a biased sample because it's way off from the overall population. Now, doing the random mixing is our best bet to avoid that kind of unrepresentative sample. It doesn't give us any guarantees that it's a perfect representation, but it gives us a very high degree of confidence that it's very close to what the overall population is like. Biased evidence leads to all sorts of biased thinking about certain groups of people. And this can be just picking and choosing, selecting certain instances you've personally had and focusing only on those to support a general conclusion. Sometimes it involves a biased interpretation of the data. You might reinterpret the data. I hope this isn't too offensive, I take this kind of outdated sexist view that some men used to think women are bad drivers. Tell that to Danica Patrick. But anyway, hopefully that's sort of outdated enough that I can talk about it and people won't be triggered. What they might do is they see plenty of drivers on the road who are driving perfectly well, and they see a woman behind the wheel and it just doesn't register. Whereas, they see a bad driver and they see a woman behind the wheel, it cements, it's burned into their memory, their chauvinistic memory. And then if they see a bad driver and they look and it's a man behind the wheel, this is where biased interpretation comes in. They'll reinterpret that as, well, that's just one errant crackpot. He doesn't really represent the whole group. But then you see a bad driver and it's a woman, you think, okay, typical woman driver. Biased interpretation of the data just to maintain your irrational generalization about a group of people can be put in the service of positive generalization or negative generalizations. But our ordinary firsthand experience is almost always woefully short of a large random sampling. And so we get into all sorts of problems. And so overgeneralizing other groups, this is the essence of stereotyping, whether it comes from a hasty generalization from only a few cases or a large biased sample of, those people, they're all like such and such. That's the root of stereotyping. It leads to all sorts of social problems. I assume it's obvious enough to you how this plays out in real life. And it's quite sad because, like I say, people, when you have a big jar of marbles, black and white marbles, people know how to do it. People know how to reason well. But then thinking about groups of other people, we just go off the rails. It's really tragic. But critical thinking, largely is this mental discipline, this cognitive discipline. Note the brain's tendency to do that and steer clear of it. Let's see. This is garlic. I know what to do with garlic. I've seen this on video. I go boom, 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 and there's the garlic. Hey, that works. Okay, so until next time, be careful with your generalizations about other people and maybe even pit bulls and cats. You know, cats are snooty. That's a common overgeneralization. Until next time, be well, think well. I'll see you later.